This is the Seven Figure Standard Podcast, hosted by Arash Vasugi and Mikey Stiller, with mindset and strategies to help you break through and create personal freedom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Seven Figure Standard Podcast. I'm Mikey Stiller, joined by my co-host, Arash Vasugi, and we are so happy to be with you this week. We have an interesting episode for you. So you may be familiar with a battle that might be going on in your mind, and that's exactly what Arash is going to talk about today. So Arash, I'm going to bring you on to cue us up for today's episode.
All right, thanks, Mike. You know, the mind is so powerful. And if any of you all have ever been in a place where you're doing too many things and you're trying so hard, you're working so hard, because a lot of people have a badge of honor, I work so hard. Or people will say, if you look on Instagram or any of the socials, I woke up at this time. And whenever I see that, I always go, nobody cares. And but they have this identity around it. And what I want to do is follow up on last week's episode of All In and really bulletproof everybody for long-term success. And that's really winning the battle in our mind. And it's really conquering the enemy. We all have this enemy. And that enemy is that other voice that tells us, let's accept smaller goals. You're doing better than most. Or I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next year. When the economy gets better, I'll do it. When I have the money, I'll do it. Does these sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready yet. This is the enemy. But we have to understand what holds people back is they play life as an amateur. And to win in life, you have to be a pro. And why they play life as an amateur is they're shrinking. They're hiding. You know, I could say this for many years. I used to hide. And I've thought about it forever. I'm like, why was I hiding back then? Because I'm such a different person now, you know, but I always like thinking about where I was because I never want to go back there. But the reason I was hiding or shrinking, and it was around a story I was telling myself. But the real main reason, I was so worried about what people were thinking. For me, that was my crutch. That was when the enemy kept beating me. But to really conquer the battle, we have to change the dominant story in our mind. And every day we're telling ourselves stories. The amazing thing is, if you look at all the wonderful things you've created in your life, there's a certain story connected to that. And the stories you believe have created the identity you have today. So if you believe, Mike, we all have stories, so you can look at this for yourself. Like if you think like people who believe, okay, I'm going to lose weight, they always do. But the people who think it's hard, those are the ones that yo-yo, right?
Yeah.
Or if we go to, if you believe that I'm going to be successful, those are the people who will. Those will be the people who will.
And the great thing about that is anybody can be that person because you can choose to believe whatever you want at any time.
Yeah, I remember years ago, you know, I had a real good friend of mine, and his business partner basically screwed him. And we were in Toronto, and I said, why don't you go create your own business? Like, you're already doing this. Why don't you just go do it? And literally everything was took out from under him. Like, he was going through a big story going on. But he reframed his story in that moment. And literally, like an hour later, he picked his company name, and now he's a multiple seven-figure earner. But what he did was change the story.
Mm-hmm.
But what a lot of people would have done was used it as a victim. He didn't use that, you know? So this is all about winning that battle in your mind. So what about the stories we tell ourselves that don't serve us? Like, think about these stories. Stories about why other people can do it, but I can't. Or I've never done it before, so I'm just going to give up on that. Or the stories about why you're not qualified to do a thing. Like, I'm not ready yet. We did an episode. Nothing's going to happen until you do a thing. You have to make the move before you're ready. But this is why this is so important if you're going to win that battle in your mind. You have to change the story. The stories you believe are forming your identity and creating your life by default. It happens so quickly. Go ahead. You're going to say
something. What you're saying is making me think of is that the battle is the things in our mind, the stories, the distractions, the beliefs that are fighting for our attention. And so there's our higher self and our lower self, and they each have a story and they each have a belief, and they're fighting for our attention. And whichever one we give attention to is the one that's going to win. Will you go deeper into that?
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. We have two different voices. We have our stronger voice and our weaker voice. And one of them is going to win. And I remember growing up, watching cartoons, and there was always like the devil and the angel, right? Mm-hmm. And we have that going on in our life. We have that one voice that says, conform, complain, limit yourself. And the other voice is saying, no, keep going. Go after something big. Yeah. So if we change the stories we have, we're going to change the direction of our life. But everyone listening to this has a story. But I don't think people really understand where the stories come from. And that's why I wanted to take this. How are the stories formed? And people must understand how the stories are formed and how they write their story. Nobody wakes up and says, listen, I want to keep shrinking. Like, I didn't wake up every day and say I wanted to keep hiding. But why did I keep hiding? Maybe some people can relate to this if you're hiding, or if you've ever hidden before, or if you've ever shrunk, you could probably have a good understanding. But what happens, it always starts with an event or an experience that happened in our life, positive or negative. And our mind gives it meaning. It will give it meaning. But once the mind gives it meaning, our brain is our mind in action, and our brain goes out and will turn it into a belief.
So with what you're saying, the difficult part, or it doesn't have to be difficult, you can walk us through it, is that so often we tell ourselves these stories until they become a part of us. And so they're wrapped up in our identity. And so how do you go about unwrapping them to write a new story?
Well, we have to be aware of them. A lot of people don't even know that's their story. So that's why I wanted to show you how the story is formed. You'll have successful people who are really successful in money, but they're not successful with their health. Well, they have two different stories going on. And so they can rewrite their health story just as much. But if we go back into last week's episode of All In, you have to be all in. Like, decision means death of everything opposite of that. And that's where people never go all in. They'll say, I'm all in for 2 weeks. I'm all in. They don't say that to themselves, but after the 2 weeks, their old self comes in because they're using their will. They never change their image of themselves. So what we have to do is ask ourselves, what do we really want the most? What is it that I want the most? Not what I want right now. And when I know for my life, and I don't know if any of you all can relate to this, but I used to go for a few weeks, maybe up to 30 days, all in. Okay. It wasn't all in, but I said to myself it was all in. And then I go back and I make one bad choice to my old self. I make another one. So I never change. And that's why I was always starting and stopping. So what we have to understand is our want dictates everything. And our want we have to be congruent with that want. And the want has to be what we want most. But this is why it's so important to have a really big goal. If I have a small goal, it's not going to cause much growth, but a big goal demands greater overcoming of greater resistance that develops my character so much more that I can never be an amateur. Like, I always brag about my mentor. I feel like I had the best mentor in the world. And He used to tell me, amateurs complain, pros demand. And he said, Rush, we always have to be a pro, you know? And what I was an amateur. When I was hiding, I was an amateur. When I was losing the battle of the mind, I was an amateur. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but you don't need to be perfect. You want to keep understanding whenever you go to a smaller version of yourself, whenever you're letting the outside control you, that battle has been lost for that moment. Doesn't mean you can't change it, but that's where it's lost. So, depending on the experience that you've had or the event that has happened, if you accept that story, if it's good, you're going to create a great result. If it's not so good, I promise you, you're going to hold yourself back. And that's why it's crucial. We have a battlefield going on in our mind every day. I mean, look at all the distractions we have. Think about all the distractions we have. That's why we have to choose discipline over feelings, discipline over emotions. When we choose emotions and feelings over discipline, then we really destroy our lives. And that's why it's so important to really, this is like one of the most important things that I ever did. This is one of the most important things I ever did and still do every day.
So what is required to overcome an old story? Just decision?
No, you got to rewrite it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just decision. Decision is a starting point of everything, but you have to rewrite the story. So you have to ask yourself, is this story real? Or is this story the one I want to continue living? Then you've got to act. Action is your best weapon. I say that all the time for anything I teach. Action is always your best weapon. Think about it like this. I want you to think about it. Two people have the same event that happens. Well, one person uses it as fuel. The other person uses it as a crutch. That same event, but two different stories connected. Like I know for me, every time I fail, I'm so grateful for the failure. I'm so grateful for it. Now, the old me would not have been grateful for it. So two different people, even though it's still me, but two different versions of me, created two different stories. You know, I have a client who just had back surgery. Great guy. I mean, he's really been battling it, And I sent him a message yesterday. I go, something really great is coming from this. Like, if it's been this hard on you, something really great is going to come. And because I know that, but that's my story. So we have to rewrite the story, but your goal demands a certain story. The goal is never going to be achieved living a smaller story. Mm-hmm. And so what is the story right now that you're living is the question. You will know whether you're winning the battle of the mind or you're losing it. But the beautiful part is you could be losing it right now. And maybe this is for you. The person I'm talking to right now that's like, I'm going to bulletproof my story. I'm going to 10x my story. And when you do that, you're going to set yourself up for massive success.
Arash, what role would you say that your disposition or attitude plays into the story that you're living? So is it an amplifier or is it more of a deciding factor?
Well, I think amplifier is a great word. It's amplifying one way or the other, though. It doesn't mean it's amplifying positively. It can amplify negatively too. Yeah. Like somebody can go into safety mode because that's what the story likes you to do. If it's a smaller version of yourself, it's always trying to protect you. Or it can amplify you. Like, look at my story. Like, I lost my job. I was in a ton of debt, had a foreclosure sticker. And then I used that as a fuel for me of dissatisfaction that amplified my story. Where I could have used it the other way. Like, I had two options. There's like two paths that I could have taken. But there's going to be some people listening to this, Mike, and they're going to think, well, they can do it, but I can't. Not true. You could do anything you put your mind to. And that's why you have to start building big ideas. If you have a small idea, it's going to be a small story. You've got to build big ideas. And that's why big goals are so crucial to really creating the life you want.
Okay, this is a little off topic and I don't want to take us off topic, but it's kind of on topic too. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about how important it is the people you surround yourself with, especially when it comes to the stories you're telling yourself. Because if you're all fighting a similar battle and you all have a different story, or you all have the same story, it's going to be easier for you to keep that story. Whereas if you are around someone who has a extremely positive story, it would be hard for you to have an extremely negative story.
Yeah, I mean, who you hang around is so important. Who you mastermind with is so important. Who you share your goals and dreams with are so important. And because you're just going to start taking on their story. Like anyone who's in my circle knows I'm super sensitive to negativity. Like I don't even want to be around it. Like I will run from it because I keep only surrounding myself with people with a positive mental attitude. I had the best. I was just in Cabo. I got to tell this story. I was in Cabo, and I was going to get a massage. So I'm using their facilities before the massage. So I'm in the. I did the cold plunge. By the way, I am not a big fan of cold plunges. My brother loves it. I'm not a big fan. Anyway, I get in the jacuzzi. This gentleman comes in the jacuzzi, 80-year-old guy. Well, we start talking. And he actually grew up in the Bay Area where I did. So it was just like, what a small world. But we were talking, and I love learning from people who are so much older because they have so much wisdom about life. And he was sharing with me some of the experiences. Well, I was learning from his story. Like I was oh God, it was one of the best, it's probably the best conversation I've had this whole year. I was telling my wife about it. And I really hated that I had to go because my massage came up, and I told him. But I learned so much from his story of what he overcame, and his company ended up going public. But he was telling me when he was in San Jose, he would work for a company called IBM, and he kept getting laid off, job to job to job to job. Then he built this world-class life. And I asked him, I said, what was the biggest change? And he said, my family was my motivation, and I just kept working at it. But you can learn so much from people's stories. Like stories can either infect you or empower you. Like this story empowered me because obviously I'm still talking about it because we had such a great conversation. So what we have to understand is how important the stories are we're telling ourselves. So are the stories you're telling yourself building you up or tearing you down? That's a question you have to answer. Don't hide from it, because one of the keys to success, which I've shared many times, is we want to be brutally honest with ourselves. We want to be brutally honest.
You just brought up questions again, and you brought that up earlier where you said, you have to decide you want to live a new way by asking yourself a question. Do I want to continue living this way? How do you rewrite the story if the answer is no?
Well, you're not going to rewrite it you're saying they want to change to live a different.
So they're saying, no, I don't want to continue living the way that I am. So then,
you have to commit to the new story. You have to really make a committed decision that I'm no longer settling. This is how I'm going to live. And I recommend always writing it, because when we write, it deepens our commitment on a subconscious level. So you make a statement around it, but then you live into that statement every single day. You literally live into it. Like, let's say somebody who's struggling in their business right now, but really wants to create a successful business. I want them to stop committing to the suffering. I know it can be difficult because the results are in their face, but I want them to rewrite their story. And if they rewrite it and live it for 60 days, 90 days, they're going to see everything in their business start reshaping itself. But how would you rewrite it? I'm so happy and grateful now that my business has absolutely created exponential growth. I am constantly living our vision, and I am taking massive action every day. Then that person, every time they're about to shrink, they go, no, I'm going to continue taking action. I'm going to continue serving. I'm going to continue helping. Because that's how you build a business. You build a business by building up your skill set and building up your service. And if somebody just wrote that every day, it's going to get inundated in them. But what most people do, they don't do it. Why don't they do it? This doesn't work. This doesn't work. They do it for 3 days. They do it for 5 days. How much is it costing you right now with shitty discipline? How much is it costing you with poor commitments? So you're always paying an opportunity cost. You're either paying it forward or you're paying it against you in regret. But I always tell everybody what I know that works. I only give it because I've done it.
I love this so much because what you just explained becomes like a future self framework that you can hold up as a mirror to yourself. And so when you go to make a decision, you're like, oh, is that the same decision that this person I said I'm going to live as would make? Is that the same way that they would be disciplined? Is that the same? So you can hold it up and be like, oh yeah, I committed to this. Am I acting into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge is this. People never question their stories because they're living so much outside in. They're letting the marketplace control them. I'll listen to people and they'll say, oh, because X is happening in the market, that's why. And unless they ask my opinion, I don't say anything. But if they ask me, I go, is that accurate? And they go, well, what do you mean? And I say, well, is there somebody in your industry right now crushing it? They'll say, yeah, there's a lot of people. Then I say, do you think they're having the same experience you are? And then they don't say a word to me. They don't say a word. But this is the question I ask people all the time. I say, have you ever felt no matter how hard you try, how hard you work, but you're always hitting that invisible ceiling that's keeping you stuck even though you could do more? And they say, that's exactly how I feel. Because I know that's how I felt. Well, that's the story we're telling ourselves. 2 people, same vocation. One person is blaming the market. The other person is killing it. What's the difference? The only difference is the story.
Yeah. All right, Raj, let's jump into an action step for today.
I want everybody to look at their goal. I want you to just put it in your mind right now. And then I want you to ask yourself, is my story that I am living right now congruent with that goal? Because I can assure you, if it's not going to happen. And I want you to remind yourself every day we're telling ourselves a story. As soon as we wake up, every single day. And I want you to go back to the amazing things that you've been able to create in your life and accomplish. And understand the reason you did it because there was a story there. You knew you were going to do it. Even if you didn't know how, you're like, I know I'm going to figure the way. And so stories are a self-fulfilling prophecy. They're shaping your identity shapes your results. Win that battle in your mind. Every day, we're fighting that battle, every one of us. There is a battle going on. I want you to win it.
Arash, this was such a fantastic episode. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and leave us a rating and review. Share this with your family and friends. And we'll see you next week on another episode of the 7-Figure Standard Podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of 7-Figure Standard. We hope you found the insights and strategies helpful on your journey to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform to help us reach more people like you. To learn more about Arash and Mikey and how Voss Coach & Co. can help you achieve your goals and reach new levels of success, visit vosscoachandco.com. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of 7-Figure Standard.